Sewing buttonholes on the Opal sewing machines is a breeze, and included with the machine are two buttonhole feet. One is labeled as just a regular manual C foot, and this one is the automatic one-step sensor foot. Being that it's sensored, it is going to plug in, and I'm going to show you one thing on this red wheel, which will help sense how far the buttonhole has traveled and turn around at the right length. There is a white crown and a red or a white line that need to line up prior to stitching. So if you get a little message that says to line that up, possibly you've gotten it in and it's not together before stitching. So we'll start off by changing feet. Go ahead and attach the foot first, and then right up here, you can kind of feel it with your finger, is where the sensor is going to plug in. Once you kind of maybe peek underneath or see, you'll know when you've got it plugged in all the way. Make sure you give it a little push and make sure it clicks in. And then we're going to start off with, from our row number 1, buttonhole number 25, and touch OK. It even tells you that this foot is set up for this particular stitch. And then you're going to take your button and lay it down on the measuring area. And see that little dotted circle? That's going to say where to put the button. And then measure it out. So this one says 17 millimeters. And then right here where the stitch length is, it has a little picture of a button and it says 16 with an arrow pointing up or down. So we can just dial in the length that we need. So I'm going to just do 17 and then it's actually ready to go. Now on the front of these feet, there are some red lines which will help you set up your starting point to be identical across your entire project. So this bottom red line here is actually 5/8 of an inch away from the needle. So if you have other measurements, you can use those. The stitching will stitch away from this folded edge here and then back. As I slide this in, you can also, if you have bulky fabric, you can actually lift this red wheel up and slide this in as needed. Then slide that down, and then when you're ready to stitch, it's ready to go. So we're going to step on the foot control. Once you've done that, it's going to stitch a line straight back, zigzag over that straight line. It's kind of got 6 steps to this buttonhole, so really just let it do its thing. You can also touch the cutter function. It will blink. If you touch it while you're sewing, you're going to find that it will cut for you when it gets to the end. So just put your hands in the lap, let it do the tack at the end, and you'll hear the cut when it's finished. And it did do some locking stitches also. So here we have it, our very first buttonhole. So just trim this little thread off and then open that up with a buttonhole cutter and it will be perfect. Now, if you find yourself needing to repair a buttonhole or do a manual buttonhole, that's what foot letter C is all about. So when we put this on, we will control the starts and stops of this buttonhole. Sometimes what I like to do is even put a mark of how long I need that to actually be. So we're going to go ahead, we'll set that up on the first line that I drew. And when we have the let's see here, more of the manual buttonhole, we're going to use stitch number, you can do 27 is set up. I'll do that one. That one is actually a stretch buttonhole. So we'll just go ahead and start to stitch. Now it doesn't know, because there's no sensing here, where that line is. So we're going to need to actually stop sewing when we get to that line. There we go. I'll take one more stitch. And the screen will actually show a reverse button picture on there. So touch that one time. That's going to tell the machine that we're ready to turn around, do the tack at the top. Now it travels back down the right side of the buttonhole. Once again, you will need to control where that part is stopped. Touch reverse. That will set for the very last part, the tack at the end, and then it will stop for us. Since we didn't push the thread cutter, we'll push it at the end, and then we have a perfect buttonhole. Now, you notice the little X's on this one. You're going to find that that's great with a stretch fabric because it's not as heavy of a stitch. Doesn't need to be as heavy either. You'll notice you have keyhole buttonholes, jeans buttonholes, and all sorts of other ones that you can do with this machine. But I want to show you one more, one that is a corded buttonhole. A corded buttonhole is going to start off, you can actually cord any of the buttonholes. So let's go back. Let's actually do the very first one, number 25. And we'll switch back to the sensor foot. plug it back in. Let's go ahead and we'll just do the 16. That's the number that it always starts off with, is a 16 millimeter buttonhole. I'm going to show you on this foot. These feet are actually identical. So what you have here just has the extra sensor wheel on it. But do you see this little part on the back of the foot? That is where we're going to put the cord. We're going to wrap the cord around about halfway on both sides. And then you're going to notice that when we set this down, it's going to lay in the 2 channels that are on the bottom side of this foot. Go ahead and slide this up and over that little toe in the back, around. Start sewing. You don't have to do anything different. If anything, I just kind of hold these tails right up front, and it's pretty much just going to stitch over the cords like normal. Now, right before it does its very last stitch, what you can do is actually give the cord a little pull, because it's not on the little part on the back, or if it is, nope, it's not. And then cross the cords in front of the needle, and then that will actually catch the bar tack, will catch that and kind of secure that all at once. And then we'll cut them off. We'll cut. And you actually get a very stable buttonhole with this type of cording inside. And here, what I'm going to do is just cut these really close to the ends. Go. Give them a little pull, and their little tips will disappear in there. Perfect. And that way, if you have, once again, if you have stretchy fabric, that's going to help kind of give it its own stabilizer. It also makes the buttonhole look richer. You notice how this looks flat and this looks more rounded, and you can even feel the difference when it's actually on the fabric. One more thing that you can do when you're working with manual buttonholes, if you have fabric that is kind of uneven, you're going to find that you can go into the settings. And sometimes when you stitch these lengths here, one is thicker and the other one is more loose. That is something that you can actually control in the set menu. Go kind of arrow down, get to the bottom part, and there's something called buttonhole balance. And this screen will allow you to, and what I'm going to do, since we don't really have anything to unbalance here or fix, I'm going to just go ahead and kind of plus it up. 7 is the setting that is the highest that you can do, and you'll see the difference. Okay, so as we stitch, what's going to happen here is it's going to be very thick on one side and loose on the other. This is the one where we touch the reverse button to tell it when to turn around. So I'll just kind of do this as we go here. Just push it as I get to the end. And then as we're done, the cutter's nice because it pulls those threads to the back side and makes that last little bit perfect. So if you have the result of this on your fabric, just because of the way it's bumpy or there's some nap to the fabric, you can control that, do a manual buttonhole, go into the set menu and balance it out. You can go plus all the way up to 7 and minus it to the other direction. And then that way you can create the right look based on the fabric that you're sewing on.